My name is Cassandra Diamond, and I'm the founder of BridgeNorth Women's Mentorship and Advocacy Services, and also a person of lived experience. Human trafficking in Canada is primarily for the purposes of sex trafficking. We also do experience 3 other forms of trafficking here in Canada. That's forced labor, that is servitude, and organ harvesting or organ removal. And so all of these types of trafficking happen here in Canada, but I do focus on sex trafficking in Canada. BridgeNorth is born out of my experience in the industry and my time in the life. I was 10 years exploited and trafficked here in Southern Ontario mainly, other areas as well. When I was able to exit the life, I, for the first time, found a community that loved me and that took me under their wing. And with a couple of years of growing with strength and learning all sorts of new things that I had been missing huge gaps of basic things like cooking, just cooking. I was able to find some hope. And through finding hope, I decided that I was going to go back and go get the girls that I used to be back in the life with, because it was the first time in my life. I was 27, almost 28 years old when I exited. It was the first time in my life that I had experienced a moment without sexual violence. The first time, and I was almost 28 years old. I had to go back and tell the girls that there was something so much better for them. BridgeNorth, we do 3 things all day. That is public education, advocacy, and direct services. If you could imagine putting, in our case at BridgeNorth, we work with children. If you could imagine putting a child in the center of that kind of triangle, you know, where we're protecting the youth, we're providing services that assist the individual and the families to, reduce the vulnerabilities that traffickers exploit in youth. And we help youth as well through public education and awareness. So letting people know what's going on in their community. And so many people here in Canada actually still think that these are people coming from other countries here in Canada to be exploited. But it's not true. 93% of victims are Canadian. 93, right? And it's the victims are from Canada, but so are the traffickers. And so are the customers. We have to talk about all 3 of those actors in this issue, right? Oh, let me share with you, first of all, there's so many ways that trafficking can start in a person's life. In past, people used to, warn you about that sketchy looking person. But now, it is the average kid sitting perhaps even at home. Family is at the house too, and they're on a mainstream social media app. And they are, all of a sudden contacted by this person they've never met before, but has a pretty sweet profile. Looks like a facade often of power, prestige, or privilege. And it's very attractive. So we are finding that more and more recruiting, more and more trafficking is occurring online. And I do have a lot of concerns about that, because at BridgeNorth, we mainly serve children and youth between the ages of 12 and 17. All of the youth we're serving, all of them are navigating usually the internet, social media apps by themselves with not a lot of oversight perhaps. And they also, I find, youth don't have anybody to go to for help if somebody tries to recruit them. So we have lots of examples of that. Some of the vulnerabilities, it's interesting. Imagine yourself, if you could. Your family life is destabilized. It's no longer safe for you to stay home. Perhaps there's drugs in the house or alcohol, too much, not a little bit, way too much. Perhaps there's violence in the home and constant yelling. You know, sometimes it comes to hits. Oftentimes, you know, children that have experienced childhood sexual abuse or neglect end up in the child welfare system. Once in the child welfare system, this is a staffed house. You're not allowed to hug kids. You're not allowed to reassure them through physical reinforcement that it's gonna be okay. And so a lot of the kids that I'm talking about, they have paid staff as parents, not parents, right? And so imagine now if you, not having any hugs, very limited affection at the age of 13, 14, 15, and somebody comes along and they tell you that you're beautiful, that you're stunning. In fact, I've got to know and learn everything about you. I think you're smart, right? And all of a sudden, that love and that belonging, that need to fit in or be seen is starting to be filled. You see, this person, this victim, is somebody who might exchange, you know, money or sex for love, belonging, and affection. It's not because that child is choosing sex as work. That's not the case. Did you know in Canada, it is illegal to have sex with anybody under the age of 18, and it is non-consensual, so anybody under the age of 18 can't sell sex themselves. So we know it's illegal, right? And so I think that when I tell about the stories of victims, like the one whose vulnerabilities I kind of shared about now, what we're not talking about is the customer. Because the customer, you can tell the difference between a 15-year-old and a 23-year-old. Why aren't customers recognizing this and then not making that purchase? If I could talk to males, just men for a moment, I would really want to tell them that I personally believe in them. I think that with positive role models for men and for boys, I think that we can solve a lot of this, what I call toxic masculinity, that leads boys and men to believe that they're only valuable for their physical appearance or how strong they are. That's also not true. The women and girls that we're talking about, yeah, oftentimes, you know, we'll find that a trafficker will intentionally return a person home late. So what they're doing is they're testing to see if somebody's calling that child, wondering where they are. They're pushing all the boundaries to see if somebody's going to call for that child. Oftentimes, the kids that I've just described with the vulnerabilities I've just described don't always have somebody calling a missing persons report in. So oftentimes, the kids that I'm talking about, they've been gone for 3 or 4 days before anybody's even reported them as missing. That's how vulnerable they are. And yes, we know that Canada, you know, anywhere I stand in Canada, it doesn't matter where I stand in what town, city, or province. I know that trafficking for the purposes of sex is happening. I just want to know, is this a place of transit? Are victims being driven through this place at higher rates than others? Is this a place of origin? Are victims coming from this area at higher rates than other areas around it? As well, is this a place of destination? Are we finding that this is where victims are ending up being sold? So for example, Toronto is primarily all three, okay? But if you were to go to where I'm located in York Region, and I'll say Aurora, our office is private, but we're located in York Region. But if you're located in Aurora, then I would know that this is a place of origin. More victims come from this city than other cities around it. And with this information, we can start to combat and better make decisions on how we support communities where we know victims are coming from that community at higher rates. We can then target this community and start to run public education and awareness campaigns for youth, for children to learn to spot the signs themselves. If we know it's a transit location, then we can strategize around that. We can implement signs, road signs, we can implement all sorts of things that would assist. In the last 18 months, we have assisted 77 persons. Out of those 77 persons, 67% of those persons have not yet blown out their 16th birthday candle. They are in our program because they have been or are being currently exploited or trafficked. So we work with suspected cases as well. Those children and young people that may be at risk of becoming exploited. And that could happen very quickly, as you know. And so we have, I think, information that that sheds light on the same population, the same people that we care about, but from a different lens. So I'm a community service provider, I'm a community organization. So I assist, and I help to prevent the crime from happening versus police who perhaps may enforce the crime to stop happening. So we as community groups, especially as a specialist in human trafficking and in anti-human trafficking, that it's really important for community groups like ours to grow in numbers, to be well funded, to be well supported, so that we could reach the population that we're talking about.